Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bold Explorer, out on another exploration, and I'm joined by the lovely Julia. Hello, lovely Julia.
Hello, lovely Richard.
We've got lovely Joseph with us as well in today's episode. We're in Findon in West Sussex, down just north of Horsham, Worthing. I don't know why I said Horsham. 3 miles from Worthing, northwards. And this is going to be a sort of mini-series on the villages off the A24. The A24 is a very busy road at the moment. It's a London to Worthing road, but it wasn't always as busy as it was, and it went through a number of villages, all of which now have been bypassed, so you can go through the villages pretty quietly. There's a big lorry behind us just reversing. So we're going to have a quick stroll through Findon and have a look at some of the architecture, the houses, and try and find the heart of the village, because as we were saying on the way here, so much has changed, hasn't it?
Yes.
Over the last, in one person's lifetime.
That's right. I was talking about the length of my grandmother's lifetime. You know, things changed so much since 1917.
When she was born.
When she was born.
Yes, in
obviously
the middle of the First World War.
Yeah, obviously she's gone now, bless her, but...
Yeah. So in her lifetime and in my father's lifetime, born in the 30s, so much has changed. So behind us we've got the Black Horse pub, which sort of marks, I suppose, the southernmost tip of the village of Findon. We're going to go up the high street up towards the main crux, which is a lot older. Ready?
Yes.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Actually, we'll stop just here, even though we've just got going, and looking at the Black Horse pub, what you can immediately see is that it's not a particularly old pub, but it looks old.
Yes, it's got an Victorian, Georgian, is it, kind of look?
Tudor look, isn't it? It's
That's
like an
it.
Elizabethan look on it.
Yeah, of course.
But actually, there was a pub here.
Yeah, the original building was demolished in 1938. And and then this one was
erected, and I think in the 30s there was this resurrection of the mock Tudor.
Yes,
and so you see the beam. So it looks old, but it really isn't. But there are some much older pubs much further up the high street, so we're going to have a look at those.
I get the impression that this particular building was built with the idea of servicing this road.
Yeah, because in the 30s the A24 bypassed the village, and it used to go through, and by doing so it actually dissects, and we'll see that in a minute, the route to the church, which the church being the heart of most villages is actually cut off.
Yeah.
But we'll find that as we go. Let's carry on up. So this is the lane I was talking about, Julia.
Oh, right.
This is the lane that goes up to the church and crosses the high street here. And it's interesting because the church is, I suppose it's about a quarter of a mile away from the main hub of the village. But as we've come up, you notice all those lovely old properties.
Yes, there was a Victorian one covered in flint.
Yes, and now that's very much the style of trying to sort of, keep in with the locality and flint.
Yes.
Because you've got Sisbury Ring just more or less opposite us. The South Downs and Sisbury Ring, the Iron Age hill fort, and then the Neolithic flint mines are all up just above us there. And then in this valley that we're in, you've got the manor house, an old manor house up there, which I think is a Georgian house now, but there was an older manor house which really, I suppose, established Findon itself. And we're in the valley, and then you carry on, and there's more hills which have more flint mines from the Neolithic. So we're in a very important ancient bit of landscape here.
Yeah.
But further on we passed a different type of house.
Yes.
Georgian.
Oh, yes.
Very smart looking house, and it would have been, I don't know, a doctor or somebody very important.
Yeah.
And this part of the village is the southernmost. And of course all of this is open. We've got more modern houses from the 30s and 40s here, but all this would have been open and farmland. And when you look on old maps, it's so clearly obvious.
Yeah.
And so a Georgian house set out like that must have been somebody who was prospering very well.
Yes, it looked rather grand. Not terribly big.
But he probably may have had his own orchard, or an orange grove or something, like that. A lovely property, and now, of course, worth a mint.
Yeah.
So, but we're getting close now to the hub of the village. So if we just keep going up the high street, we'll get to see it. Well, Julia, you know what this tree is, don't you?
Yeah, it certainly looks like a London plane to me.
It is. It's a fabulous example of a London plane, and it's interesting that it's set in a little bowed area on its own, as if pride of place. And of course, it's quite an old tree.
Yeah, so it's at least 200.
Yes,
at least.
London planes were introduced in the 17th century, around 1660, something like that, when they were first sort of two different trees were. What do you call it?
Hybridised.
Hybridised, yeah, exactly. And of course they've become wonderful. They're planted trees. So this one is deliberately planted here, pride of place, in this little section of the village, and it must have, been there for a reason.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, we've seen some other trees along.
There's a nice little line there's a couple of limes and a holm oak. And a holly.
Yes.
But apart from the holly, they're all at least 200 years old.
Exactly.
Minimum.
And the limes, again, are planted trees and very much used in avenues.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that this route down was obviously beginning to get more developed, as you say, a couple of hundred years ago, in time with the Georgian house.
Yeah.
So just observing the landscape, it's really interesting. And the holm oak that's pollarded and in an unusual shape.
It's a beautiful tree, and it's bizarre that it's been allowed to get to such a maturity before it was pollarded. So it's just hanging like it's a weeping version of itself. It's very strange, but lovely.
We're now very much close to the hub of the village, so we're going to go and have a look at a couple of the pubs that are there, and then up to the pond. I think we go this way. We've come past the centre hub where the Gun Inn is, and the other pub, what's that called again? The
Village House.
The Village House. And we've actually had a meal in there, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
With a very lovely gentleman.
Very lovely gentleman who is one of our wonderful viewers. And in that heart of the village, which is, they've got their own butcher, which is great to see, a proper butcher's.
Yes.
Which is lovely.
I'm surprised that they still have more than one pub open right next to each other as well.
Yeah, well, I think there's
there's
the Black Horse we saw, the Gun Inn, the Village House,
yeah.
That's 3 pubs, and I think there's one more. You've got Findon Manor, it's called Findon Manor, which is a grand house which does weddings and that sort of thing. So Findon seems to be one of those villages that has still got a thriving community here. Which is great. And then next to the Gun Inn is the little road that goes up to the Findon roundabout, and anybody who knows the area, this is a roundabout where you come off the dual carriageway to come into Findon, or you'd carry on and get on the bypass. But if you carried on, you go over what's called Long Furlong, and you'd sort of bypass Worthing altogether and get down onto the A27 at Patcham. Or Patching, I always get those two Clapham anyway. Oh, Patching, that's it, Clapham and Patching, that's how I remember it. Which are 2 villages down that way, so that's fantastic. Okay. But where we're standing, the reason we've come here, which is not terribly interesting to look at behind us, but when you look on old maps, here was the village pond.
We'd be swimming.
And
right now.
In my mind, it's such a shame. It's grassed over, and it's walled off. So, there's a couple of seats, I suppose, for kids to sort of do that. But how lovely to have had a nice village pond with ducks and a bit of wildlife and all of that. But that, alas, has gone.
It's gone.
Which is a bit of a shame. So it's now just a grass. But sorry, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, an interesting fact is that I do believe that Aldeniti, the famous racehorse, was trained here in Findon by the legendary Josh Gifford.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and Bob Champion rode Aldeniti to the finish line in first place in 1981 on the Grand National. Did I say that? The Grand National?
I don't know.
The Grand National.
These are things, I'm not into horses at all, so none of those names mean anything to me. But you're quite right that certainly on the slopes towards Sisbury Ring, that is known for a lot of horse training.
There's at least 3 different horse training companies around here.
Yeah, definitely. And there's Barnes and Flint, and that's been going on for donkey's years.
Or racehorse years.
Yeah, exactly. So fascinating bit of landscape here with more of these wonderful properties, but some quite new, and they're trying here to make them look like they're part of the landscape, aren't they?
Yeah.
And sort of they're sympathetic to the village.
Still slightly offensive if you want to take offence at it, but they're calling new buildings Tithe Barn.
Yeah, and you wonder
unless it's on the location of.
Well, that's what I assume, that there must have been a Tithe Barn there, and then there's a couple of newish, very new-looking buildings with that name, and they must have that. But it's quite an interesting village. As we go forward on the A24, the villages are a lot more smaller, and we'll investigate some of those changes. But anyway, that's our swift look at Findon. If you live here and you know more about it and you want to show us around, then we'd be pleased to see you do. But this is on our onward journey up towards the end of Sussex. We're not going to go further than that with the villages on the A24. Thank you, Julia, for coming along.
Thank you ever so much for getting me out of the house.
We are slightly dubious about the tree we said was a London plane.
Yeah, not convinced, are we?
Not convinced now, having looked at the buds a bit closer, but it had that bark that was falling off. So it's difficult to tell in the winter always what certain trees are.
Slightly different shape than I'm used to seeing on a London plane, but
hey-ho.
We'll work it out at some point.
Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, become a patron, and all the usual, and we'll see you on the next one. Till then, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Right, little Joseph, time to give him a feed.